One in five suffer.
Erase the stigma.
Brain difference is not a crime.
Mental health isn't just your problem.
It's our problem.
And now, Mental Health Mondays with Marla and Dave.
Welcome to Mental Health Mondays.
Welcome. I'm Marla.
And I'm Dave. And this looks a little different than what you're used to from Marla and Dave and Mental Health Monday. The setup, we're not in studio today. I happen to be in Alabama with my family. My dad is getting up there in age, and so we wanted to make sure that all the family got around to visit him and to show him some love in this stage of his life. It's been a strange few days out here for me. Some of you know that our family has been through quite a bit, and we appreciate your thoughts, your prayers, the positivity that you've been sending our way. But hey, we're going to do the show anyway. As they say, the show must go on.
Well, there you go. So like Dave said, I just echo that. Thank you. We are receiving your messages and prayers. It's good to be so loved, but the onslaught has not allowed us to do anything but make a general mass pretty much. Thank you very much, and keep it coming. We feel your support.
Yeah, so Marla, why don't you tell them what we're talking about today?
Today we're talking about the challenges of mental health challenges inside from a parent's perspective. So dealing with the mental health issue, living with mental health issues from a parent's perspective.
And with that being said, we're going to really share our story because, as some of you know, Marla, I'm pretty sure you're about to go ahead. We have children that deal with brain differences, as we like to call it. And, we're going to share our story from our perspective.
Right. So today, our main 3 points, honestly, stick around. We will be dealing with recognition of a mental health issue, acceptance of it, and managing it. We'll be right back.
Help someone who is struggling by supporting the National Alliance on Mental Illness and be a part of the NAMI effect. Hope starts with you.
Hey guys, listen up. Learn something.
All right, we are back. And Marla, why don't you introduce this first segment as well?
Okay, so anyway, but again, we apologize. It's very rare that it's okay for our guests to be remote, but we are dealing with very sensitive family issues, so we're both on the road. So let me just start with this. Mental health and really mental wellness, everything that we do with this particular program, which we're happy to be in partnership with NAMI, San Fernando Valley, and our foundation, which is Love and Beyond Reason. And so with that, this is really about the journey of mental health, because everything we do in this life is a place that you travel from point A to point B. Unfortunately, when mental health challenges arise, number one, that's where I want to start. I want to start with how a parent, from a parent's perspective, we want to talk about our first recognition of our children facing challenges with their mental health. And so, or their mental wellness.
I was going to say that when our kids were young, just like most parents, we were excited. You don't really expect to have brain differences when your kids are young, because when they're babies, you don't notice things that are any different from any other babies. Kids were great. We had great times. We had fun. And not that we don't have fun now, but things were proceeding from a normal perspective.
I disagree.
As far as I'm concerned, is what I'm saying.
Mm-hmm. I will remind you.
What is it that you disagree with?
I disagree with it. I don't disagree. We thought that when they were younger, but now that they're older, looking back in retrospect, I do know now that there were markers and things that I saw that were differences that long time ago that you would have never even imagined to put it to something that would later turn out to be fractured or a brain difference. You just looked at it as a unique personality,
little personality quirks, and that's really what I was going to say. As they grew up, we saw little personality quirks, but they didn't seem to stand out to the extent that there was something that we should have been overly concerned about. We have 3 kids. 2 of them deal with mental health issues or brain differences from one spectrum or the other. I see, Marla, you're trying to say something.
No, I'm nodding because that's very accurate. And one of the things that I almost find now to be strange, but almost a divine intervention or plan for us to be able to bring these messages, is between Moniece and DJ having different challenges. They cover the spectrum pretty much. We've, as parents who are always dedicated to help, we've had to dig in and deal with it differently with their particular independent challenges. But together, they pretty much cover almost the entire spectrum of mental health challenge. So there's that. So let me just say this as a, let me start with this first segment is really dedicated to recognition. What did we recognize? What I recognized early is both Moniece and DJ had challenges with their social interactions, their connections as children. You know, whether it seemed to be, I want to say reclusiveness, but super socially awkward. There was no balance in normal kid play. That's number one.
And those were the quirks that I was going to mention that we noticed. Little things, and oftentimes, you know, had we been trained and taught to look out for these early warning signs, we probably could have handled things a little bit differently. And I'll tell exactly what I'm talking about. For instance, when DJ was playing baseball, we literally, things where it seemed like he was seemed shy or a little bit withdrawn at times, especially when the pressure was on, the spotlight was on. You know, as a father, I was just pushing him and saying, man, you just got to push through that. Instead of being sensitive to what he might actually be feeling, I was more pushing him into a situation that probably was building up some stress, if that makes any sense. And so those early years, things in those stressful situations that all teenagers actually go through, even early teens, when you first start to have changes and you want to start thinking about, you know, girls and opposite sex relationships, and maybe even, you know, just attractions, boyfriend, girlfriend type things, you know, things where, you know, dads just kind of like to bond with their kids, their sons especially, and their daughters as well, because I was early girl dad before it was a popular thing. And so, you know, just pushing them into areas where they might be uncomfortable. And those are the types of things that I would have regretted. I actually regret slightly now.
So what did I notice? And, you know, I was, you know, unfortunately for Dave, but, you know, and in some ways I will honestly say, unfortunately for me, there was a lot that I noticed early on. So let me give you some differences.
Before you start, Marla, we want to actually start deal with that. We don't really in our family focus on diagnoses. Right. Is there anything that you want to say about that?
Well, no, that's a good point. The diagnosis is a handlebar. That's the way I say that. So when we're dealing with mental health issues,
it's a treatment guideline as far as we're concerned.
It just gives you an understanding of the problem, but it doesn't deal with the management of it, because it just helps you understand the behavior, but it doesn't. It's not a label. We don't whip our kids around with, you know, you're schizophrenic. No, that's irrelevant. The behavior is what we needed to understand. And we also need to be able to get treatment. So I want you guys to understand that that's the purpose of a diagnosis, to get a handle on being able to properly guide the situation. And you can't do that if you don't understand it. So that's why I say that I wanted to start. Parents ask me most often, what did you notice? How soon did you notice? And I honestly can say with Moniece, it was very young, 11 months. I realized, wait a minute, there's something. And when we took a trip and we came back, and she was actively ignoring us as an 11-month-old infant. And I was like, no, what kid does that?
Exactly. And we're going to continue this when we come back from this break, but it's very interesting. Stay tuned.
When Dave and Marla get together, it's hot.
It's okay to think you're in a toxic relationship with the world right now.
So Marla, there's a lag.
It's okay to feel like your world is changing.
It's okay if it's hard to find the words to express how you feel.
It's okay to feel like you just want to become someone else.
It's okay if you're panicking over an inability to control your life right now.
It's okay to have trouble maintaining your normal routine while staying home.
It's okay if you're feeling more cynical than usual.
It's okay if you want to curse more than you usually do.
It's okay to wear your favorite tank top several days in a row.
It's okay to miss your job.
It's okay to just stay quiet.
It's okay to be depressed.
It's okay to talk to your cats like they understand what you're saying.
It's okay not to feel the most fabulous right now.
It's okay.
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 It's time for the Mental Health Minute with Marla and Dave.
Psychotic disorders are severe mental disorders that cause abnormal thinking and perceptions. People with psychoses lose touch with reality. Two of the main symptoms are hallucinations, hearing or seeing things that are not real, such as voices, and delusions, believing things that are not true.
Psychotic disorders include schizophrenia, the most common psychotic disorder, schizoaffective disorder, schizophreniform, brief psychotic disorder, delusional disorder, substance-induced psychotic disorder due to medical condition, and paraphrenia.
Here are some helpful things to do when someone is experiencing psychoses. Calm things down. Reduce noise and have fewer people around the person. Show compassion for how the person feels about their false belief. If possible, do what you can to help when the person is acutely unwell. For example, turn off the TV if they think the TV is talking to them.
If you or someone that you love or is experiencing any of these symptoms, please contact a psychiatric professional and, if necessary, 911. This message is brought to you by NAMI San Fernando Valley and Loving Beyond Reason.
David is a thinker.
I never do anything without thinking about it first.
Marla is a feeler.
I basically wear my personality on my sleeve.
But when Marla and Dave get together, it's like a match dancing with a firecracker.
Okay, welcome back.
Yes, we are back. Marla, you were saying before we went to the break.
So I was saying that I just wanted to begin to address the main things that I'm asked on a regular basis, because as we advocate for breaking stigmas, breaking silence, erasing stigmas, and bringing really just love to the understanding and education of mental health, these are the questions I get from parents almost daily. So, you know, how soon, what did you see? What did you recognize? Was there anything different? And because we're this much further down the road, there's a lot that we can share with other parents at this point. So I talked about Moniece being at 11 months old, not able, she was ignoring us. She was with David's parents. We went on a weekend. I went with him on a weekend trip. She was with her grandparents. And when I came back, she was literally like, and I was like, hey, the girl, I'm over the shoulder trying to give her a kiss. And I looked at David and I said, is she
ignoring us? Giving us the cold shoulder?
Because that's so not your babies, your children, you're their whole identity until they become somewhat independent, and discover friends, and they, discover that they like orange instead of, that they have favorite colors, and you develop affinities to things. And until that, all of that assurance, all of that comfort, all of that, care comes from your parents. They are your identity into the world. So for her to ignore that at 11 months with no traumas or abuses, I was like, that's strange. And as far as DJ, go ahead.
Go ahead. And I was going to say, and because Marla's mom has been in the psychiatric department as a nurse for many years, she was noticing things that actually Marla and I did not notice. And so,
matter of fact, we rejected what she was saying because it was so foreign to us. And that's important.
It was so foreign. We were like, Mimi, I'm not sure that we totally agree. But she was, and thank God for her, she was so persistent. We actually started taking Monique to therapy just because, Mimi insisted. Her grandmother, Marla's mom, insisted. And it started to help. But we were getting so many different diagnoses that actually we didn't think fit because some of it sounded correct, but some of it just wasn't fitting all the attributes, characteristics and behaviors that we were actually seeing at the time. Would you agree with that, Marla?
I totally agree. And while we're here, I'm going to leave room in the last segment if we can. You can ask questions. So if you hop to the chat room, just be sure that the public is able to understand that we are reading these comments. And so if we can help at all, we will.
And where can they find that chat room? Where can they find that chat room?
They can find the chat room at UBN Go, or you can find the chat room at NAMI, NAMI-SFV.org or Love and Beyond Reason, any one of those three places, but I'm monitoring Love and Beyond Reason. So on Facebook. So anyway, yes, my mother insisted, and like Dave said, I think the other thing I need to tell parents, once you realize or once you suspect that there's a problem, you have to be patient going through the process, because like David just pointed out something very important, essential. It's rarely the first doctor you get to that lands it. And furthermore, once you think you have it, like life and the journey, there are transitions that happen, and mental health disorders morph. What may be, you can be, you can have anxiety disorder, depression, and here's a good one, bipolar. Bipolar with sustained mania develops a psychotic feature. Psychotic features can become schizoaffective,
exactly,
or schizophrenia. With extended trauma and changes in the brain, it continues to progress. So Absolutely. What I'm saying is right. What you're diagnosed with today, which is why I say the diagnosis is just a handlebar to begin to deal with things, because the truth of the matter is that it can change, and what you need to do is begin to monitor the behavior. You need to understand and look at the triggers.
Yeah, and then as both of our kids actually started developing into their teenage years, we started seeing behaviors that became a little problematic, things that just were they, going through teenage rebellion, or were they actually dealing with mental health issues? And both of them had started therapy quite early on. But we didn't really settle on appropriate diagnoses for either until much later in their teenage years, and for our son into his 20s, because our son actually was just dealing with substance abuse issues as well. There were substances for both of them from time to time, but it was really our son that had the substance abuse issue. And we're going to continue this when we come back, because the important thing about this is that we don't have time a lot of times during these 30-minute segments, and we're going to probably have a part 2 when we get back in studio, but stay tuned. We're going to continue the discussion after this. Marla, Dave. All right, it's time for the poll question break. Last week's poll question was, according to the American Psychiatric Association, what percentage of Americans feel that the coronavirus pandemic is having a serious impact on their mental health? Your options were 19%, 36%, or 47%. And Marla, what is the correct answer?
36%?
36% of Americans feel like even those that weren't previously dealing with mental health issues feel like they're having mental health impact just due to the virus, due to the pandemic. Marla, you want to give them the new poll question for next week?
You know what? Thanks, Dave. I would. Many Americans don't have access to adequate mental health treatment. What percentage of American adults with mental illness did not receive care in the last year?
Did not receive care in the last year.
I'll repeat that. What percentage, your poll is, what percentage of American adults with mental illness did not receive care in the last year? 14%, 38%, or 56%? You know what to do.
Absolutely. Everywhere you see the poll question on our social media, on our website, NAMI San Fernando Valley or Loving Beyond Reason, take the poll. It's fun. It's informative. You'll learn something. Back to the show. All right. This is our last segment. Time flies, but I really wanted to move right into once we finally got the appropriate diagnoses for our kids, how we had to deal with that. At the time, for our oldest daughter, who I think we had the diagnoses kind of figured out for her before our son, at the time, we brought her back into the house and we were dealing with it and we were going to therapy with her. And then she became a mother. And, you know, once that happens, a lot of times it becomes difficult for
way more complicated
to cohabitate. And she was able to actually move out on her own, get her own place. But as usual, and this is a very important thing that I want to say to all parents, once, and we were touching on it in the last segment, once you get the right diagnosis, that is not the end of it. You also have to have a therapist that the individual can relate to as well. I know for our son, his first doctor that he dealt with, that we took him to, I didn't even like the doctor.
Yeah, it wasn't a fit at all.
Not a fit at all.
It's like the pediatrician where you take your child and even if they have a runny nose, they give them amoxicillin. I'm like,
it was very strange because the doctor wasn't really listening to me as I was talking. Right. And I didn't feel at that point that if I were to have to leave the room, because, you know, the therapy is not mine, it's DJ's therapy. I didn't want DJ to feel what I was already feeling. So we kept looking. And that's a very important thing. You have to find the right fit for successful long-term mental health care.
The question in the chat room, hi, Nicole, and we miss you. She asked, Mimi's picked up on things early. Was there any way that you could have gotten your attention any sooner? No. And let me just tell you this. It is a person's natural instinct to relate to things based on who they are and what their experiences are.
Are you saying who the parent is?
As a person, every human, the first thing I do is go into my own shoes and try to understand things. And so what I'm saying to you is that as a parent, it's the same thing. When you're dealing with things, I don't even know how to agree to things that I don't understand. I understand teenage rebellion. I understand, you know, being whatever I was, but because I did not have a diagnosed mental health challenge, I have no perspective on that. I have no way of, you know, saying, I know what that looks like. We better get her to therapy. So yeah. You're dealing with it based on norms. And so no, because it's not until things get to reach a critical mass that you feel like I got to do something. I got to do something.
And it wasn't until later on that I actually learned that substance abuse can also be a mental health issue as well. And so when DJ was dealing with substance abuse, I was saying, well, I dabbled in things when I was a teenager as well. He'll stop sooner or later. And Marla was the one when it comes to that front with the DJ issue, Dave. And I apologize to Marla on air and I apologize to her all the time. And I say that she's right. And I'm sure that a lot of times it's a Band-Aid that actually doesn't fix the wound. But if you buy me
Hawaii, I'll be okay.
You got it. I literally did not take it as seriously as I should have until well after we finally settled on his appropriate diagnosis.
Right. So I don't know, this is kind of a rough thing for us time-wise because we normally are in the studio, which shout out to Tony Sweet always.
Yes, and we're going to do a part 2 on this particular subject with just Marla and I, our story, when we're in studio, when we get back home.
And we're going to break our story up intermittently throughout Mental Health Mondays because there's so much that needs to be talked about. So let me just say this. If you have a question, parents, immediately start your process to seek treatment and understanding. It's in your spirit, but you're talking yourself out of what you're seeing, what you're experiencing. Before your kids are conscious about who they are, you are observing them and they're yours. You know more about them initially than they know about themselves. Mm-hmm. So don't let the stigma stop you. And that's what I used to say all the time. You've got to really work hard to avoid parent pressure, peer pressure. Your child is not like everybody else's child. And our need sometimes to project that or present that is so great that we sacrifice our children in an effort to try to make them seem like they're just perfectly like the next kid who you deem to be normal. Our kids are normal.
Yeah,
our kids are normal for themselves. And I have to say that. Norm is what you were created to be. And if we can grab that, we can begin to arrest stigmas way early. Go.
And I will say this, part of getting a little bit more specific to the point that Marla is making, all of us have issues to one degree or the other, idiosyncrasies that can be detrimental to our success in life. But what I will also say, even with all that withstanding, everyone needs to feel validated. And that is the main thing. You said in the Mental Health Minute, don't just say, what do you think? What are you talking about? You sound ridiculous, and put them down. Say, yeah, you have a pretty good point there, which is the first part of validation, and say, you know what, but a lot of times, you have such good points and you think so deeply, I'm not able to follow you. And so if you can actually slow down and help me understand, I would love to be able to relate on a more deeper level with you. And that's something that we learned, actually reinforced our learning in Family to Family.
In NAMI class, absolutely.
Yes.
Yes, absolutely. When that learning how to actually relate and solidifying that. And, a lot of what you learn is trial and error. So save yourself the trial and the error and get yourself to NAMI, Family to Family, wherever you are, find a chapter and go, because I'm telling you, it's an essential tool.
And I would say that is, along with a good therapist and a good support group, that is the first step for support for you as a parent. Go to NAMI, take the Family to Family class, and after that, if you can get your child to actually get in the peer-to-peer group, that's even better.
So just remember too that, your acceptance is everything. Your acceptance is everything for them, because you're setting the pace as to, they're already feeling like outsiders that is inexplicable. That's the one thing I learned about my son and bipolar. And
we're gonna wrap the show up. We're gonna wrap the show up when we come right back.
Bad.
What are you doing?
You're
worthless.
Don't trust them. They'll hurt you. You're worthless.
It's pointless.
When the pain of schizophrenia meets hope, everything can change. Help someone who is struggling by supporting the National Alliance on Mental Illness and be a part of the NAMI effect. Hope starts with you.
It's raw, real, and unfiltered. Marla, Dave.
Unfortunately, time always flies, especially when you're having fun. And we always have fun talking to you guys, sharing with you guys. And what the main point of what we're trying to do here with our story really is let any parent dealing with a child a loved one with mental health challenges, you're not alone. And that's the first thing that you might feel when you start to understand that my child might be different from other children. I'm alone. I'm dealing with this by myself. That's the one thing, the main thing we do not want you to feel. There are many others out there. In the intro of our show, we say 1 in 5 people suffer with this. You are so not alone. Out of every 5 people, you know somebody, whether they admit it or not.
And I want to leave us with this. I'm going to begin to break this down. The next time David and I do a show about our situation and transparency, I'm literally going to begin to talk about the do's and the don'ts. That's our next focus for our next half hour. Whenever we bring that, we have some great shows coming up for you. We have a surprise for you next week. It's a big story to tell. We have reached out, and looks like we've got Brand finally coming on. She's been very busy with her album. And we have as you know, there's a history with our family, but what we need to talk about is the journey. So you don't want to miss that.
Mental Health Monday is always brought to you by NAMI San Fernando Valley and Loving Beyond Reason. Marla, go ahead with your last point.
My last point was just, we need your support.
Absolutely.
Please go to NAMI-SFV or NAMI-SanFernandoValley.org. Donate.
LovingBeyondReason.org. Donate.
And so we need your time, we need you. The resource. We need you to join us in this journey to be able to erase the stigma and break the silence, because it's not just your problem, it's all of our problem. And if we bind together, we can solve some of these issues. Let's do it together.
Absolutely. We see you guys next week. Thank you.